Hey everybody, welcome and happy Wednesday. I am so glad that you are here. I am with my just dear friend, Katie, that I cannot wait to introduce you guys to here in a second. But as we are waiting for everybody to kind of hop on and get going, I want to know from you guys where you are tuning in from. We want to just say hi to you and, welcome you to the show. And I also want to know if you struggle with perfectionism, or if you're a recovering perfectionist, because I know that is something that I deal with a lot. That's why you're here.
Absolutely.
Obviously, to talk about all of things to do with perfectionism. But we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. We're going to hang out with you, make sure our sound is working. So if you guys want to test it out and tell us hello, tell us where you are tuning in from in the comments below. And of course, while you're hanging out with us, please share this video. All you have to do is click the little share button, and that way your mother, your sisters, your aunt, your cousins, your girlfriends will be able to hang out with us live, because this is a topic that I know so many women struggle with, and so much so that I needed to bring in an expert to talk about it.
We hope.
Oh my gosh. Hey Tabitha, what's up, girl? Portland, Tabitha said, because you're amazing and you only have gold to share. Well, thank you. And my other sweet little gold girl is right here. Hey, Shelly. Okay, so the other thing that I thought before we actually officially start, this is just, we haven't even talked about this, but I love to sort of research a topic before we get on live. And so this morning as I was getting ready, I was like, I bet there's a great podcast episode that I can listen to that talks about perfectionism and gets into it, and so I can kind of start priming that pump to thinking about it. There was nothing.
Are you kidding?
I was like, whoa. How are people not talking about this?
Wow.
That shocked me.
We'll have to do one.
I know. I looked up Rob Bell's. I looked at so many different women that I follow.
Nothing.
And I was just, scanning all the different titles. Nothing about perfectionism. And I thought, is this one of those things that is kind of taboo to talk about? Like we feel it, but we're not talking about it?
I don't know. I feel like it's
I was shocked.
a hot topic.
I know.
Man, or maybe we're just too afraid to really admit that we're perfectionists.
Well, let's just call a truce and be able to say that we all have struggled with this at one point or another. We've got Daniela here. We've got JJ here. Welcome, guys. So glad you are here.
Yay.
Okay, so let me introduce you to my dear friend and therapist, Katie Gustafson. We have known each other, since I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
Young.
Neighbors.
I would actually walk over to Katie's house, and I used to babysit her younger sister and her younger brother. And it's hilarious that our paths have crossed again, because we lost touch for
a long time. Yeah.
And we have a mutual friend who brought us back together. And I was like, oh my God, I know Katie.
Seriously.
It was so cool. But I'm going to read your official bio. So Katie is a psychotherapist, creative, and founder of KatieGustafsonCounseling.com, based in Nashville. She helps empower and inspire women to live fully into their truest, most authentic selves. She is passionate about holding safe space for others to unblock past trauma, reconcile old storylines that don't fit anymore, and write a hopeful next chapter using tools such as brain spotting, narrative therapy, and the Enneagram. She is convinced that as we wake up and partner with ourselves and our desires, we will inevitably find meaning and calling. As a recovering perfectionist, Katie has also come through her own path of healing from depression, anxiety, and disordered relationship with food. Reconnecting to the body through mindful awareness and other forms of self-compassion are a major part of her healing work with women. When she's not working in private practice with clients or talking about the Enneagram, you can find her in a recording studio or making a royal mess in the kitchen for the sake of a last-minute dinner party. So I love that. It's so true. Katie is I would say you're the hostess with the mostest.
Really?
I mean, I just look at her, guys. You know her parties are going to be fabulous.
That is so sweet.
I just love it. And I had to say, you are just so incredibly authentic and such a vulnerable spirit, such a bright light. And it's fun to be able to connect with somebody who, not that our stories are similar, but there's like similar threads of things that we've dealt with. And that has shown up in a really different way for both of us. But I feel like when I speak to you about anything, you're like, yes, oh my God, yes. And that, to me, and a friend, and also just somebody who I admire, is just like comforting to know that somebody who is successful, who has studied psychotherapy, who has gone into a career to, in a way, like from the outside in, I think sometimes like, oh, like, let me help perfect people. Let me help like fix all the broken pieces. And to know that so much of your story has been about not even fixing anything, but just learning to accept and to love, which gives you great empathy and compassion. And so I'm just so glad you're here.
Well, I'm so thrilled to be here. So grateful. And I'm in awe of you. Like, I'm nervous right now because you're such a rock star and you just effortlessly host and make people feel so comfortable and welcome. And I'm such a huge fan of you. So thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. This is so fun. She brought me coffee and flowers, you guys, as a welcoming, not even a welcoming, like a, hey, I'm going to be on your show. Here's your gift, which nobody's ever done before. So thanks.
Well,
flowers are my love language. I love it.
I did know that.
Shelly said, I love you both so much. Shelly, we love you. Okay, so I want to hop into your story because I know that for those of you who are watching, you probably don't know Katie super well. You don't know her like I do. You don't know, her story. And so I feel like in order for us to kind of wrap our heads around women and perfection, we need to know why you care about this. How did you come to the place where this is a topic that you enjoy talking about? How have you struggled with that? Struggled with this. Take us back in time and maybe share some of your ugly bits and pieces and like the struggle so that we kind of know a little bit more about your heart and your journey.
How much time we got?
You got 2 minutes for this, guy.
Not enough. Oh gosh, man, I feel like from the start, I don't know if it was a genetic predisposition or if I just learned this really, really young, but I have always been so incredibly hard on myself. God bless my mother. I remember being like 4 years old. I kid you not. And I would not leave the house unless my ponytail was totally seamless and perfect.
Wow.
And if it wasn't, I would pitch a fit and like sit in my room and sulk. I mean, dramatic.
Wow.
At its best.
4 years old.
4. It
Sheesh.
just like, and man, I was such a pill. I don't know what that was about because I don't consider myself really uptight. But yeah, I feel like I've always been on this quest. It's like go big or go home.
Yeah.
And but I've taken that out on myself as opposed to other people. So I think I've just constantly had this idea or version of myself that I strived so hard to live up to. I mean, I struggled with a lot of depression, a lot of terrible body image issues from like age, I mean, like probably 6, 7. I mean, just...
What did that look like? Because obviously we talk a lot about that on the show, about body image and what that looks like to hate your body and to loathe your body. How did that manifest itself for you? Like, would anyone have known that you struggled with that?
I doubt it. I think my mom did. My mom and my dad. I can remember we had a babysitter who I adored, and she was really, really tall and thin. And I remember being kind of starting to grow into my body, and I was like exiting that lanky, awkward stage into another awkward stage.
Yeah.
The awkward stage. And I remember she would go, she was a runner. And so she was like super healthy, and she like came by the house and picked me up, and we were in her little car. And I can remember looking down at my legs and looking at her legs and just being terrified they touched. I mean, that's That sounds insanely like minuscule at that young of an age, but I can remember.
That's traumatic at that age,
It
though.
was such a deal. Like, I don't even know where. My mom has a great relationship with food. Like, my older sister, that was never a deal. Like, I don't know where I got this again. I think it was just this incessant need to show up in the world as something like that would make me feel accepted, or make me just show up in general. So I just can remember from such a young age. I mean, I started dieting at probably around age 12.
Wow. Has anybody else done that? I just want to pause to get some interaction with our people. Who has started a diet, or who started a diet when they were under the age of 15? Like, raise your hand, give a little thumbs up, give a heart. You can type in a number 1 in the comment section below if you have, because that was my story too.
Yeah.
I did like the cabbage soup diet in 5th grade.
What?
And I didn't
even know about that one.
My friend's older sister was doing it.
Yeah. I've got some years on you, though.
You know, so I was like, okay, sure, I'll do that. So you were dieting from a young age.
Yeah, it was wild. Just a lot of, school, sports, everything was just, I remember, I just feel like I've lived like clenched all the time. And eventually that kind of developed into, the depression was its own beast. And I think out of that came this need to take control of my life. So at the root of it is all fear.
Yeah.
And so what happens when we try to, it can be starting out as a really pure desire. So I had this really big desire to get really healthy, and nobody in my family was like super healthy. So I was like, I'm going to start running, and I'm going to start eating really, really healthy and cooking for my family. And so I kind of took that upon myself. That was kind of my new thing. I think this was like, I don't know how old I was, like 12, 13.
Wow.
I loved running at an early age, and I just started being really cognizant of everything I ate, which sounds good. It started out pure, but then what happens is it becomes, it quits serving us and we start serving it. So I kind of became a slave to this really clean, really strict and rigid eating and exercise, which kind of snowballed into a whole different beast. So.
I feel like I see that all the time because what happens is people say, well, I'm not dieting. I'm just healthy. I'm eating healthy. But there is this level of obsession that starts to take over.
Yeah.
Where it's not about listening to your body intuitively and what does your body need. It's about control. It's about perfectionism. About I cannot eat the wrong thing. I have to eat the healthiest thing. I have to put in 20 superfoods in my smoothie or else it doesn't count.
Totally.
Or I have to do bone broth and probiotics and all things that are by themselves really wonderful and really life-giving. But there's this like energy sometimes that takes over where we think it's like the sociably acceptable way to kind of mask our perfectionism and control because it's healthy.
And what happens is people notice. Like, oh man, you look so good.
Yeah.
You look so fit. What have you been doing?
Yeah.
Which just feeds it and feeds it and feeds it until finally it starts.
So did you ever have a moment where you just crashed?
Totally.
Yeah.
I can remember walking up the stairs at my high school. This was now years later. I think I was probably 15. And going up the stairs, maybe 16, going up the stairs and like literally my brain was not working. Because I was so malnourished, and I was walking up the stairs, and I totally lost all memory. I didn't know where I was going.
Wow.
I didn't know where the classroom was, and I asked this girl who was, I think, a senior at this point. I was a sophomore. I said, "Hey, do you know, is our test today?" And she looked at me. She's like, "I'm not in the same class as you." So it was literally wreaking havoc on my brain functioning. So it was not kind of, it was kind of a fallout. It was urgent. It got bad. It got pretty severe. And the thing that kind of kicked my tail into gear was the threat of getting put on feeding tubes. And so, so I was like, okay, I can maintain this. I can be okay right here. I'm not going to lose any more. Just going to stay here.
Had you known somebody or seen a story in a magazine or something about being on feeding tubes? Like, I feel like I didn't even know that was a thing.
I did. There was a girl 2 years ahead of me, and she had a similar experience. And I remember she was put on feeding tubes and just got sent to all these different rehabs. And I just remember that scaring me so big time.
Yeah. No.
And also, thankfully, I mean, this was kind of a divine thing. I saw a picture of myself. I don't think I'd ever, like, we weren't obsessed with Instagram and like constantly looking at pictures of ourselves like we are now. But I remember somebody sending me a picture. I'd gone to visit a friend, and she sent me some pictures, and I finally, it was like I saw it. I was like, wow. I could see how severely depleted and grossly thin I was. And that was kind of a wake-up call too.
So how did you work yourself out of that? I mean, was that part of your adult story as well, or did you sort of get a handle on it through your high school, college years?
Yeah, I definitely, it was an ongoing, I definitely feel like I came out of that really strong. Going into college, I was super healthy, made a great comeback. It kind of transferred. I feel like it's an obsessive need to control.
Yeah.
And so for me, it just kind of cycled back into some depression, anxiety. And the underlying is to me all about fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of not being enough. So it kind of just turned on its head and looked different.
Yeah.
So the different clothing, the eating disorder, definitely there was a lot of healing had there, and I was super grateful for that.
Yeah.
But it just kind of, I think that was how it showed up for me, that was how it showed up in the world. And then it kind of took on a different face of other types of perfectionism, other types of control. It's like the whack-a-mole game. Totally. Like we get one of them down, and there's the other one, there's the other one.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so it's fascinating to hear this, because I think everybody can relate to this in some way, even if it wasn't an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't struggled with anxiety or depression, that there is this need that we all have to like have our stuff presentable.
Yeah.
So that we are loved. And I think that as women, this is even hard. I feel like, well, I don't know if it's harder on women. I guess I probably feel that because I'm a woman, but I think men and women both struggle with perfectionism, probably in different ways. Totally. Before I get to that, because I want to like ask you a little bit about that, going back to your story real quick, like fast forward for us quickly, like how did you get here?
Yeah.
To where now you're talking about this, you have a practice surrounding helping women and men, you know, kind of recover from this.
Yeah. Can we be vulnerable here?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean, this is it. Like I literally had kind of a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Mid-20s, and it was just, so again, it looked different than an eating disorder, but it just was this need to show up in the world, need to impress, need to be loved, and all at the root of all of that is complete disconnection with self. Yeah. So disconnecting from our truth, disconnecting from what we really need and really want in order to be liked and be accepted. And we all know this language really well. And I think I just ran so fast, so hard, and there's not enough time today, but there's just, the treadmill was just, it was just so fast. And finally I literally had a breakdown, again, it wasn't eating related, but it was just, exhaustion, like physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, relational exhaustion. And I found myself in the psychiatric hospital for a week because I couldn't remember like who everyone was. It was, again, just this complete and utter disconnect. Yeah. And I just had to, it was like the reset button for me. It was and a total wake up call. And it was one of those moments where I just literally kind of cried out to God and was just absolutely desperate, and desperate for the reminder of who I truly was, as opposed to all of these different masks and ways I was trying to show up in the world.
I feel like I can so relate to that. Yeah. And Alicia said whack-a-mole is such a great analogy. And even beyond that, it's like the mask. It's like, who do you want me to be? Okay, I'm going to wear this mask. Who do you want me to be? I'll wear that mask. Who do you want me to be? Okay, I'll wear that. And it's that exhaustion of trying so hard to be pleasing to whoever it is out here that we think we need to please in order to be loved, in order to belong, in order to be a part of a group or in a relationship and have that sense like we're not alone. Right. And so without that sense of self, we just kind of become that chameleon and mold ourselves in whatever way. And I think that like what amazing grace to be able to have that break and a reset like you had, to say like, wait a second, like your soul, I feel like your soul was calling you and saying, come back.
Right.
And that you didn't get to like,
I love that.
Get away. It was like, I always think like our soul, our true self is always rooting for us, is always like saying like, you know, remember who you are, you know, and we know that. And that's why that's so hard. That's why we suffer, is because we can feel the disconnection. Yeah. We can feel the misalignment.
Right.
I mean, that's just thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah. I'm totally going to have a hangover tomorrow from that.
No, you know,
but no, it feels that's at the core of who I am. It's just that kind of honesty. If I don't share that, I am not being true to myself. And I love what you said. I love that, because when we were talking before we started recording, we were talking about this whole idea of Michelangelo's David.
Yeah.
Which I heard this, and I'm going to totally butcher. I'm not going to say it eloquently at all, but essentially, we were talking about this idea that Michelangelo would talk about his pieces, his sculptures, his all his work, and he would say, you know, the slab of stone that David came from had every bit of that beauty in it. Every perfect piece was in place. All I had to do was chip away what wasn't necessary, what didn't need to be there, in order to bring out the truth and the artwork and the grandeur of that piece. And I love that, because it's what you're saying. It's like, I think so often our 20s, well, before too, are spent going out there to try to find something that looks perfect, in order to validate us and make us whole in here. And what I've experienced in my 30s is it's been like an unlearning of that process, and literally sitting with myself and listening to what's already there.
Yes.
And that to me is kind of the shedding of this live perfectionism.
I love that. I tend to say like the job that we have is not to continue to fix and continue to seek outside of ourselves. It is to remember who we already are.
Totally.
It's like somewhere along the way we picked up on the lies that we're not good enough, that we aren't lovable, that there are conditions on being loved, that we have to follow a set of things, and that's different for everybody. And until we do that, and that looks, for women, I think, for our bodies.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like we have to cross some beauty finish line out there that's arbitrary, that's always changing. The targets, finish line's always moving. Yeah. But until we can figure it out and pass that finish line, we're not able to be loved. Totally. And so as women, it's always external. Yeah. And I love what you said about Michelangelo. It's like seeing that rock, all of that beauty, all of our worthiness already exists
Yeah.
inside of ourselves. And it's just that remembering, that soul calling you back, you know, that remembering of who we are.
Yeah.
And like, what a beautiful and hard journey to unlearn. I love that you use that word, unlearn those lies.
Absolutely.
Ugh. So tell me how you see this show up for women rather than for men. Like, how is perfectionism different for women than it is for men?
Well, I can't really speak to what that looks like for men, mainly just because I haven't seen that play out in a lot of the men that I've known. I've never, well, I won't say any, but most of the clients that I work with are female. And most of their storylines have this illusory perfectionism that kind of crops up. And then, I mean, but I'm not saying it isn't true for men. I just think men have a different set of expectations that culture kind of unloads on them. And that's kind of the rule. They're exceptions. Women have this very tangible set of expectations that culture, this kind of liturgy that culture like is constantly calling us to, that says, this is what it should look like. This is what you should look like. This is how you need to show up in the world in order to be feminine or beautiful or accepted or loved.
And as a mother and as a wife.
Totally.
And like,
absolutely.
I know so many people, I don't have children, you don't have children, but we're in a community of a lot of moms, and that pressure and that need to be the perfect mother and to be present at every function and have the best birthday party that's, you know, Pinterest worthy so that you get the Instagram photos for that, and that the lunch is completely organic and there's no preservatives in the lunch and the kids have new clothes, and it's just like, I mean, all those elements of perfectionism that I see being passed down to children also. Like, you can't go to school anymore as a kid and play outside and get dirty and just be. Yeah. Even from a little age, you know, children now are taught that rigidity and performance and pleasing to the camera more than I think any other time. Yeah. And so that's a big one, I think for women.
Definitely. I think the difference too that I see, and this might be old news or it could be, I don't know, but something that I've seen play out is just the different roles. Like, I feel like women tend to be objectified physically more than men do. Totally. Which kind of incites this need to like show up as that object in a really good way. And I am all for, I love being my best self. I love looking cute. Like, who doesn't? Like, I think every woman, but it's the difference between a healthy striving and this slavery of perfectionism that is a good fine line to dance on and really come to identify within our own soul, like you said.
Well, and it's the difference between, I think, doing something out of an abundance of love, like self-care, and like, I joke, I love to get my nails done, and I'm not doing this for anybody else.
Always looks so
nobody
good.
really notices. Like, it's for me.
I do.
You know? But I love it. Like, that's a self-care thing. That's like a beauty thing that I enjoy doing for me. And there's plenty of women who do all kinds of different beauty regimens out of a healthy place of self-love that I might say that seems silly or I don't want to do, but for them, they want to do that. But then there's this other, the shadow side of that is doing all of this to earn love. Sure. I had to be perfect so that so-and-so doesn't abandon me. I have to, even like growing up, my mom said, never leave the house without earrings and lipstick.
Oh man, I've heard that.
Like that, and that's not, that wasn't for me. Yeah. That wasn't because it
was endearing. Probably.
You know, yeah, but like, I didn't care. I mean, that was like one of those things as, you know, as a younger girl, I mean, that felt like a mandate. Yeah. That felt like, unless you wear lipstick and earrings when you walk out the door, this must be a Southern thing. I don't know.
It is a Southern thing.
Anybody who's from the North or from the West Coast, if you, I said the North.
But look at us. We did good.
I know. Look, Mom, look. But like, is that a normal thing? Will you guys tell us in the comments? Like, was there any mandates that your mother or your sister or your friends said that like you have to do this like as a beauty regimen? Because that felt like I had no choice in the matter. That was like, if you're going to show up in the world as a woman and be respected and seen as a woman, you have to, at minimum, have to have those two things. It was like a non-negotiable.
Right.
And so I think early on we learn to please all these different expectations, external expectations that people have on us. Yeah. And I just keep thinking, like you said, slave, like a slave to perfection. Yeah. And I just think there's no better way to describe that, because it feels like that. It feels like you were chained. Yeah. It feels like you have no out. It feels exhausting.
And it's all, I mean, I keep coming back to this. It's all fear-based. It's like,
okay, talk about that a little bit.
So it's so funny because I kind of grew up thinking like, well, I think fear can serve us really well. I mean, it kept us it kept us alive for centuries. But we don't need that anymore. Like we don't need to operate out of this place of fear or anxiety. Yet I think what happens, I don't know, like it's kind of like if I walked up to you and I was like, so how are you doing? And you're like, God, I'm so busy. I'm so stressed. I'm exhausted. And you're probably not even conscious of this, but it feels a little bit like a badge of honor. It feels a little bit like, look at me, I'm so exhausted. I'm so productive. You know, like perfectionism kind of gets put in that pot for me.
Yeah,
it was like this understanding.
So perfect.
Well, it just, even though if I could be perfect, then I would really matter in the world.
Totally.
I mean, so what is that? It's control, and what's at the root of control is fear. And so
fear of what do you think?
Fear of rejection, fear of not fitting in, fear of not being enough, fear of not mattering. I don't know. It's like whatever the fear is. Your fear might be different than my fear.
Well, I know I'll have a vulnerable moment myself. So last night I was sitting here on my couch and I was having a sweet little meltdown, having some emotions, and the fear that I had it was like 8:30 at night, and I was exhausted from the day. I had done a bunch during the day, and all I wanted to do was to kind of veg out to a show. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I did not have the permission. Mm-hmm. I wasn't giving myself the permission to do that, because the story that I was telling myself was, if I sit here and I'm not being productive and I'm not working in this moment, then I will not be loved, that I will be lazy. Like if I actually am being human and admitting my exhaustion and admitting that I am tired and admitting that I just need to like give my brain a rest and totally check out and veg out, then I'm not worthy of love. And so I'm telling my boyfriend this, and I'm just crying because I'm like, you're gonna leave me and it's like the crazy, like if I watch this TV show, you're gonna leave me because all of a sudden I have no value to you, I have no worth, I am not enough, I'm not working hard enough, all those stories. And I love this question. He said, that's not my voice, so whose voice is that?
Man.
And I said, it's my dad's. I said, that's my dad's, my perceived, it's not my real dad's voice, of course. It's my perceived dad's voice, which is don't relax, keep working, always striving, hustle, 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 that very masculine energy. And I had to have that moment. And I think this is like, brings down that need to control of like, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, that perfectionism is an illusion. And I am human.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be a human.
Right.
It's okay to be tired. It's okay to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I think like that was such a gift to me. Like, whose voice is that? Mm-hmm. And whatever that thing that I am striving for to be perfect in, which in this case was work, it's an illusion. I couldn't even get there if I had stayed up and kept working.
At the root of that, I mean, we were talking, is really shame.
Yes.
And I love this quote while you were talking. It made me think of this. I think it's a Brennan Manning quote or something, but he says, In shame-based families, appearance is everything.
Okay.
Again, it's a mind blow.
Yeah.
In shame-based families, appearance is everything.
Wow.
And
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean,
that makes me want to cry.
Oh, don't cry.
I mean, y'all know, you've seen me cry in here before, but that's like a, ooh.
You can cry, I just don't want to make you cry.
No, it's so good. And this is a quote from Brene Brown, and she says, when we struggle with perfectionism, we struggle with shame.
Totally.
And that is, I think, so much at the root. So, because I think we throw around words often.
Yeah.
And we don't slow down to say, like, what does it really mean? Let's talk about shame for a second.
Yeah.
Like, what is shame? Like, why is that getting triggered? Let's define it.
Okay, so something that's been really powerful for me to understand is shame is the impaired version of guilt. So guilt says, okay, I did something bad. So I feel guilty when I am
that you made me cry.
That I made you cry. Hate to make you cry. Or when I'm like really, I don't know, just not thoughtful towards my husband, or just snappy, or whatever. Like I feel like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Like I feel that guilt, and that's helpful because that lets me know that there's an invitation somewhere. Like, okay, I need to make this right. Now, when we sit in that kind of guilt, it gets impaired, and it looks like shame, which says I am bad. So shame is this on a very simplistic level, this message that says I am bad. I am not good. In our kind of context, I'm not enough.
Right. So, like I'm broken. There's something wrong with me.
This idea that I'm not worthy, I'm bad, that's shame. So what we do is we try to show up in the world using, through the vehicle of fear. It's fear driven. We try because me alone is not enough. Me just alone here without any productivity or any accomplishments, that's not enough. That's not enough. So in order to show up, in order to overcome the sense of shame, I've got to work really, really hard and strive and hustle 24/7. It's
almost like if we're going to use the words bad and good, if I'm bad, then I got to prove to you, if like the shame story of I am bad, there's something wrong with me, I am not enough.
Yeah.
Then I have to work really, really hard to make sure that I'm good, to make sure that I'm good enough.
Yeah.
And of course that shows up in so many different ways.
Right.
But okay, I love to see that link of like, okay, out of that shame, it births fear, which turns into perfectionism.
Yeah. I've got to hustle in order to show up in the world and be enough. He's like, it's so funny. I literally reread The Gifts of Imperfection, Brene Brown's book, probably every year. And what I love that she starts that book off saying like this idea of wholehearted living, this idea of complete, like just owning our worthiness, that says no matter what I do, no matter what I get done, no matter what I don't get done, I am totally worthy. And that for you and I to like really align with that kind of truth on a daily basis, that is, I guess, resilience. That's leaning into that place of vulnerability.
Okay, I want to know from you guys if you have any questions for Katie. She is your therapist on duty today, relating to shame, relating to perfectionism, control, any of the issues that we've been talking about. Please just type in your questions in the comments below, and I am just going to read some of these comments. And then I also have a special essential oil blend, the anti-perfectionism blend, that I'm going to share with you while we're waiting on your questions. But Nicole said, oh my gosh, yes to this. I do that all the time with the inner voice about being lazy. Alicia said, this is the track that I have had to rewrite in my life. It's okay to slow down. Totally. Jen said, great topic. Okay. Loving that. So as you guys are thinking about some questions that you might have for Katie, before we get into this a little bit deeper, I'm going to share with you a blend. Actually, you suggested that I do this. which I love.
I just assumed that you probably had one in your bag. Of essential oil tricks.
I mean, I do have a lot of.
I know.
I do have a lot of essential oil tricks, but here's the blend. So it's going to be 2 drops of each of these oils, and you're going to apply it to the core of the body. And I always like to pair my essential oils with an affirmation. And so if you think about what it is that you struggle with as it relates to perfectionism, like, it is safe to be me. It is okay to be me. I am perfect and whole as I am. You know, you can kind of come up with your own affirmation, but we're going to do 2 drops of geranium. Lovely. This is the oil of self-love. 2 drops of bergamot, which is the oil of self-acceptance. 2 drops of frankincense, which is the oil of truth. So this is really lovely. I'm trying to get that to focus. There we go. And then we have 2 drops of fennel, which is really lovely. I can't exactly remember which this one is. And then last but not least, the ylang ylang oil. So 2 drops of that. And this is really beautiful. It's what I have in the diffuser right now.
Amazing.
Smells so good. So again, applying that, mixing it with some coconut oil or a carrier oil, applying that to the core of your body, to your wrists if you want to, and just as you're using that, affirming to yourself that you are perfect in your imperfections, that you are whole, even though, perfectionism doesn't exist. Okay, so here's a question from Nicole. That's such an interesting name, by the way. I love that. Okay, in terms of redefining your sense of self-worth, what are some exercises you might suggest or ways to at least become more aware of the thought processes that trick us into believing we are not worthy?
Ooh, can you read that again?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
This is such a great question. Okay.
Really good.
In terms of redefining your sense of self-worth, what are some exercises you might suggest or ways to at least become more aware of the thought processes that trick us into believing we are not worthy?
Oh, God. Man, that is a process. Some things
Make an appointment with Katie.
Well, I've had amazing therapists along the way that have been incredible guides into this place. I would say the things that have been so helpful for me, I will speak for myself. This whole idea of reconnection with true self and letting go of striving, out there living. I call it contingency living. So looking constantly to other people, to accomplishments, to all these things in order to feel like we're worthy. Kind of part of the process of unlearning that for me has been reconnecting with myself through meditation. And I like to differentiate this whole idea of self-esteem and self-compassion, because the book, The Practice of Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff, I think it's probably just called Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. That has been hands down one of the most game-changing things for my journey as it relates to reconnecting with my true self and really embracing who I am without all the striving and all of the acting. So this idea of self-compassion versus self-esteem, which says, I feel like self-esteem is very much driven by, if I say, you're beautiful and I love you and all these things, if I just believe all this stuff and I do all the right things and do all the steps, then I'll believe in my true self and my worth. And
it's almost like taking perfectionism and putting it
in a self-help way.
Like, I've got to say all the right affirmations. I have to read all the right books. I have to be completely conscious of every thought that's going through my mind at all times, which is just taking an old paradigm, perfectionism, and just plopping it on self-help.
So well said. That is it. And I really believe that. So again, we're trying to get out of this contingency living, this way of doing life that says, once I get here, then I'll be enough. So self-compassion looks a little bit different. It really looks like showing compassion to a dear friend, someone you really deeply love. And I love her wisdom in that book, and she has a lot of genius research to back it up as well. So self-compassion as a practice, I highly recommend her book, Kristen Neff's The Gift of Self-Compassion. That's it. Or something. Anyway, don't quote me. We'll put it in the notes somewhere. It's easy to find. Self-compassion. Check that whole concept out. Meditation, like I said, this whole idea that all that we have and really knowing ourself and our worth that's interior work. That is something we live out in our bodies, in our breath, and that has been just a beautiful gift in my life. It's just this journey of meditation and learning what that looks like. Again, it doesn't feel very directive. It doesn't feel like a how-to necessarily, but it's been a powerful thing like Michelangelo talks about, chipping away the stone that's covering up the truth of who we are and the real beauty of who we are. So those two things I really do recommend. I'm not just trying to shamelessly promote therapy, but I do feel like having a guide and having, whether that's a mentor or just a trusted friend, having someone to kind of guide you into this place of self-compassion and self-acceptance is the greatest investment that you'll ever make.
So true.
It's just been so life-giving for me, and I would absolutely not be here without the therapists and the coaches and all the encouragers that I've had along the way. So
I love that. And I think when you think about self-compassion, which to me really, we were talking about before, the antidote to perfectionism, I think it is self-compassion, actually. At least one element of it. Because, what I think, when I think of self-compassion, Nicole, like when you are in that moment where you catch yourself attached to something or clinging on to something or controlling something or having that moment like I did last night where I feel like I can't relax because that means I'm not going to be loved.
Yeah.
Meeting that with so much compassion. Like I speak to myself like a really lovely, like compassionate mother. Yeah. And I'll say, oh, honey, like it's okay to relax. Or I'll even work on asking myself, like, what are you really afraid of?
Yeah.
Like, pause, take a breath. What's motivating this need to control? What's motivating? Because it's like, I can't relax. I got to do this, and I'm stressing. And then we start snapping at people. We start having that moment where we start blaming other people, and we start yelling at our spouse, and we start, taking it out on other people because we're feeling this anxiety within ourselves. Yeah. And it's like, okay, what's this really about? What am I really afraid of? Okay, I'm afraid that if I don't take cupcakes tomorrow to the PTO meeting, that all the moms are going to laugh at me and talk about me behind my back and make fun of me, and then I'll be alone and I'll have no friends. Yeah. It's like, okay, compassion. Yeah. Oh, sweetie, like, you're so lovable. You're so lovable. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Just forget the cupcakes. Forget the work. It's okay to be human.
Yeah. I think too, a lot of the work that I've done and that I love doing with other people is identifying the limiting beliefs that we live out of that create these emotions of anxiety. So
yes,
it's a very cognitive approach, but it's the truth. Like whatever it is that we're believing in the moment, that's what's creating our emotion
right
in that moment. So it's like, I love to ask these 3 questions whenever I get into a place of real negativity or experience a setback. And they're so simple. It's insane. But the first one is, what am I believing to be true about myself in this moment? So what's the story I'm making up about myself? 2 is this actually true? Is this a fact? And could I prove this in a court of law? That inquiry is hugely important because we have to really stare at our truth. And then 3 is, what am I needing right now in order to extend self-compassion to myself, compassion to myself? What do I need to be really kind to myself? Is that just a breather? Is that a walk? Is that reaching out to somebody? What do I need in order to take care of myself in the moment? So those 3 questions are huge.
That's so good. I just like that alone is like such a huge huge takeaway to be able to like walk yourself out of the crazy, you know, just like, what's the story? Is this true? What do I need?
Yeah.
So good. Okay, so there is one more question. Let me get to it. Okay, Rhonda said, I came on late, but what keeps coming to my mind is what is it that makes a person, namely me, say I'm sorry all the time for crap that doesn't need an apology?
Ooh.
What is that about?
That's such a good question. I do that too. Like constantly apologizing. I mean, the first thought is self-worth. I mean, that's, to me, like when I'm in self-doubt, I mean, essentially, I mean, if we need to apologize, we need to apologize for something. But if we find ourselves in a habit of constantly apologizing for God knows what, that sounds like an identity problem. Like, what's going on really? Like, are you sorry? Because when I apologize and I'm really not sorry, I get really resentful. So I feel like when I find myself constantly apologizing, maybe I'm stressed out and tired. Maybe I am feeling a lot of self-doubt, and I'm confused about who I am.
Well, I think as women, we are taught to be small, to be quiet, to not have an opinion, to not have a preference, to not have a voice. Yeah. And so it's almost like, my experience has been, as I've found my own voice, it's like every time I would use my own voice, I would have that moment where I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm sorry for being me. Yeah. I'm sorry for having an opinion. I'm sorry for having a preference. I'm sorry for using my voice. Yeah. And I'll still catch myself do that. In fact, funny story of this, when I was young, like 7th grade, I got on the basketball team. I was not a basketball player, but every time I would like go to shoot, I would be like, I'm sorry. And they said like, okay, do not say you're sorry anymore. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. It was like every word for me. It's like, I wanted to apologize for existing.
Or even disappear.
Totally.
Like be invisible or something.
And that's what we're taught, I think, from such an early age as women, is really to disappear. Yeah. To be small.
Play really small.
Play really, really small. Be small in our physical bodies. Be quiet.
This is coming to me. This might be helpful. But this idea of there's a difference between hurting and harming someone. So I think about this often. When I find myself apologizing a lot, I often find my boundaries lacking, and whether that be relationships, time, whatever. And I have to remind myself that when I say no, or when I imagine in my mind that I might hurt someone's feelings, but that I'm speaking my truth and I'm listening to my needs, and I'm saying no, I can't do that, or I didn't make it and I couldn't, and that's the deal. We may hurt someone, we may hurt someone's feelings, but there's a big difference between hurting someone and harming them, because our intent is completely different. When I think of harming someone, I think of like kind of malicious intent. I feel like I'm out to get them. And when I hurt someone, a lot of times we hurt people. If we're living in the world and breathing and have a heartbeat and being honest and true, we're going to hurt people. And that's not the worst thing in the world. That just invites another level of vulnerability and connection and obviously communication. So there's this kind of beautiful differentiation between hurting someone and harming them. Now, if we harm someone, an apology is probably a good idea. Yeah. But if we're just walking through life with strong boundaries, we're bound to hurt some feelings.
Well, and
maybe
people are, and I would even say beyond that, people are choosing to be hurt by our boundaries. We aren't hurting them. Yes. Like, we can't control somebody's emotions. And so if I say to you, like, if you say, hey, do you want to go out to lunch today? And I, for whatever reason, can't go, I don't have to say, I'm so sorry, I can't make it. Right. I can just say, I can't make it. Right. Contact me next week and let's see if we can make it work. Totally. but I don't have to apologize for not being able to do something. And if for whatever reason you're offended by that, or your feelings are hurt, or you're upset with me, that's on you.
Totally.
You know, so it's almost like that hurting somebody else is more about if that person chooses to be hurt by our boundaries.
Right. Well, and that ties into perfectionism, this people-pleasing idea. Another thing that we learn how to do really, really well in the South.
Yes.
Right? But and it's people-pleasing essentially is lying. If we're really honest. I mean, people-pleasing is dishonesty. It's it's not speaking our truth. I want to be pleasing. You want to be pleasing.
Yeah.
That doesn't always work out.
Right.
And so this constant need to apologize, I feel like does maybe roll out of this need to please.
Yeah. And pleasing, like perfectionism is also, what did you say? What did you say about it's false, or how did you say that?
Which part?
The people pleasing is, I'm blanking.
Oh.
Lying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like perfectionism is lying as well, because let's be honest, like, okay, I said this earlier, but like if you looked at Katie on the street, like she's gorgeous, she's beautiful, she has like, the best style of anyone I know. I'm always like, what does she wear this time? And from the outside looking in, you look perfect, but that's a complete lie. Right? Like you've already shared with us so vulnerably part of your story and what you've struggled with. And because you're human, I know that you're still struggling with all those things in the same way that I am, and how I had a meltdown last night, and here I am on Facebook Live today. Like the illusion, the lie is that we have it all together, that we are perfect, then that we don't struggle with these things. We never get insecure. We just love ourselves so much that this is never an issue, which is a lie. And by presenting that, it just makes everybody everyone set up for failure.
Absolutely.
And ultimately ourselves as well, because it's an illusion. Like we'll never get there.
Totally. It's so illusory. I mean, and you're very kind for saying that. And that is continually, I mean, if I'm being super honest, it's always my struggle. I mean, and growing up in my family, like beauty is so just, deified almost. It's like, and I love beauty, and beauty is such a gift. But it's also, there is this impossible standard, and we're all on the same treadmill in some way of trying to live up to that. And it is a battle, and it's and it's and at the same time, it's such an invitation. Yeah, it's such an invitation back to that little girl who's so dying for a hug and so desperate, just to hang out and just to talk and just
be one of the cool kids.
Yeah, she's like, hey, let's hang out. Let's talk. Like that's who we really are. And I feel like we abandoned her a long time ago, and it's this like process of recovering her and really loving on her.
I love that. I think that's just such a beautiful place to end. Yeah. Just that picture of taking care of that little girl inside of yourself and that self-compassion and that grace for yourself and letting yourself off the hook of perfectionism. Like you're not ever going to get there. Yeah. So you might as well just give yourself permission to let yourself off the hook for it. Yeah. And any last words on perfectionism? Any takeaway, any bit of advice, anything that you would
Did
say?
we read that Anne Lamott quote?
No.
Oh, this is my favorite quote. I love it. So this is such a great reminder. Perfectionism is the voice of the oppressor, the enemy of the people. It will keep you cramped and insane your whole life. And she goes on to talk about how it completely stunts any type of creativity, which is a huge part of my life and Mary's life and in our world is this creative endeavor as well. So it's, again, like perfectionism, just like comparisоnism, is such a lie. And buying into that lie has the opposite effect that we think it's going to have. It stunts us, it oppresses us, it keeps us playing really, really small. And I go back to that quote so often. Good. It's just, it's playing small.
Oh, this is so good. It's just like so rich. Now, I want everybody to know where they can find you. So if you have loved this conversation, if you love Katie as much as I do, which I have no doubt, you're going to want to follow her. She has a beautiful podcast that is on her website that you can find that is incredible, but you can find her on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and of course, checking out her website as well. If you want to work with Katie, you do Skype as well, right? So please check her out at katiegustafsoncounseling.com. But I want to know kind of what's up for you. Like, what's next?
Oh, man. A lot. I feel like I really relate to you in that we kind of bite off too much. In this realm, I am excited to put together a training for therapists using the Enneagram in a really experiential way. If you're an Enneagram freak like I am.
Enneagram is a personality profile assessment.
Sorry, I didn't explain.
That we geek out and talk about all the time. There's 9 different types. And it's just a way for you to see yourself in relationship with other people and understand your core motivation and different traits about yourself. That's just incredible.
So helpful. So powerful.
So you're doing a training.
Yes,
for that.
I'm putting together a training with another therapist friend of mine, and that's going to launch in January. So taking something I love from the experiential therapy world and combining it with my beloved Enneagram. So I'm excited to share that in the coming year.
I love it. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, man, I'm so honored.
I just adore you. I love you. I'm inspired by you, and just even hearing more of your story today, I'm just like, yeah, like this is the work, and this is, I don't want to say the result because it's always ongoing, but just to see you so full of life and so happy in this stage of where you are is just a testament to therapy and the work and all of that. And it's just beautiful to see, and lay down that perfection, y'all.
Yes.
Just give it over.
Show up as is.
Well, guys, thank you for being on the show, for joining us. Of course, share this with your audience. All you have to do is click the share button, and that way your friends, your family, your sisters, your girlfriends will be able to hear this conversation as well, and that allows us to get out to more people. And as always, the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I will see you guys next week. Bye.